We arrive here out of our loneliness and our preoccupied minds to create something sacred. We arrive here to greet a friend, to greet a stranger, to make ourselves known and to know one another. We arrive here to share in laughter, to share in tears, to affirm that none of us journeys alone. We arrive here because we need one another, and here, in community, we nurture the bonds of love and care that hold each of us up and that holds all of us together. With gratitude and with joy, let us worship together this morning.
Please recite with me the chalice kindling words, which I think will be projected up there. Good. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And welcome to Sunday worship at the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Burlington, Vermont. Today is Sunday, January 22nd, 2023, and I'm Melinda Lee, a member of our worship associate team. And today is the beginning of the Lunar New Year, the year of the rabbit. Did I see a rabbit come in the door? I thought I saw a rabbit come in the door. Was it you, Charlotte? Is that a rabbit you have there? Oh, it's a bird, okay. I thought I saw a rabbit. Well, and today millions of Asian people, peoples of Southeast Asia, will be traveling to join their families for the yearly wonderful celebration. Families, I understand, clean and sweep their houses from top to bottom to clear a space for the good and the new, and to enter in and get rid of the old. And this reminds me of a pithy saying that lives on the side of my fridge to remind me. This is from Mother Ann Lee, no relation, founder of the Shakers, who says, "Clean your rooms well, for good spirits will not live where there is dirt." There's no dirt in heaven, so I think of that sometimes. So. Unitarian Universalists come from many traditions, backgrounds, and we welcome all who share our concern to build a local and world community based on love, compassion, respect and care for the environment and for justice, and for those who are looking for meaning in their lives. As a part of this concern, we acknowledge that the land we enjoy and where our buildings are located and where the trees stand starkly in the winter winds and snow, and the land lies frozen beneath, is the unceded territory of the Western Abenaki peoples. We strive to fulfill our responsibility to them and act as good neighbors and stewards of the land. This morning, we are fortunate to welcome the Reverend Joan Javier Duval as our guest minister. She is a settled minister at the Unitarian Church of Montpelier, Vermont. How many of you have been to the church in Montpelier, Vermont? Very, very good. Reverend Joan has served there since 2015, and before that completed her internship at the Unitarian Society of Germantown in Philadelphia. Prior to this ministry, she worked as a community and union organizer serving nursing home workers and immigrant women in Massachusetts, New Mexico, and in DC. She brings here with her today her family and her passion for creating beloved community. Welcome, Joan. We are also welcoming back Tom Cleary, returning as our musician this morning. More about Tom a little later. And we're also very glad to have performing today Tom Hyde, and again, we're welcoming back Karen Schickering as our musicians today. So it's wonderful to see everyone today and to know that more people are joining us through the live stream and in the week to come. So I think we have some new people here. So if you're here for the first or second time, would you be willing to raise your hand so we can give you a special welcome? Oh my gosh, look at all of this. Welcome over there too. All right, we have some welcome ambassadors who would be glad to meet you, but any of us would be glad to talk to you. But especially we have Marilyn Brill, Betsy Thayer, and Susan Warner-Mills, who are here. If you could just wave your hands or stand. Thanks. Okay, if you have any questions or would like to chat. So a few announcements. We have coffee hour downstairs in the community room. Climate Conversation Group will meet in the Reeb room downstairs, and at 12:30, part one of the new UU will meet in our parlors. Please join us. And our very own youth director and creative art minister, Reverend David Ruffin, also asked me to make an announcement. He and other organizers would like you to know that there are just 10 spots remaining for the midwinter evening service next Thursday evening, February 2nd. It's a gathering of music and poetry and other sharing in the community room downstairs. And David's grateful for all those who've responded and are contributing. And if anyone else would like to contribute, please get in touch with him. And I have his email if you'd like to get that from me. And now we'll have a brief word from Zoe Hart, our treasurer.
Good morning. As your treasurer, I would like to invite you all to join me next Sunday, January 29th at 11:30 after the service for a conversation about how we balance our need to bring in money to support our society and our mission with our desire and our commitment to welcome people of all different financial means. What does it feel like to consider joining this society when you know you aren't able to make a financial commitment? Or to participate in an activity that starts with a reading of our congregational covenant, a covenant that concludes with a promise to provide financial support? This conversation will start with an opportunity for all of us to share and listen to our stories, and then explore together ways that we can continue to talk about money and still ensure that all feel truly welcome. It will be a hybrid meeting. You can attend in person in the parlors or over Zoom. RSVPs are not required, but they are strongly encouraged because it will really help me to plan how many people are going to be on Zoom and how many people will be in the parlors. So if you're able to, you can email me at treasurer@uusociety.org, or if email's not your thing, feel free to catch me downstairs in social hour after the service today. Look forward to talking with you all. Thank you.
So we're about to continue. We are so glad that all of you are here today. Come, welcome. It is good to worship together.
Good morning. Could the kids who are coming downstairs with us later come on down? We're going to try to be over on this side a little bit today. Is this working? Yes. As they're coming up, I'll just say that when we're downstairs today, we will all be working together at rotation stations, which means that we have a bunch of different choices for what we'll do in the morning, and kids can move among those choices. And some of them will remain available for adults. When you come down for coffee hour, we have a meditative room and a creative room, both on our theme for this month. And I invite you all to find our center together in those rooms if you'd like to during coffee hour. Check out what the kids were doing.
My mom
That works fine. Have a seat. Nice to meet you. Have any of you been to a different UU? Josie has. Anybody else? Yeah, a few other friends have been to different UUs. Did anybody know that there were other UUs not that far away from us? No? Some of you knew. Some knew. Well, I think it's pretty cool that today our ministers are swapping places. So our Reverend Tricia is in Montpelier delivering a sermon for their congregation, and Reverend Joan has come from Montpelier to be with us. And we'll be downstairs during the sermon, but I wanted to make sure you all had a chance to wave and say hi to Reverend Joan. Now, does anybody down here notice anything different over here than usual? Charlotte? Charlotte says there's a new piano player. That's right. No James, no Sam, somebody different. But grown-ups, is this a new piano player? We actually know this gentleman, Tom Cleary, really well. He's been a member at this congregation for a long time, and his mother was actually a minister here. Not when he was a little kid like you. He was already grown up when she was a minister here. And Tom is a well-known musician. He teaches people jazz piano. Have any of you ever been to Jazz Fest on Church Street? Nobody's been to Jazz Fest on Church Street? You have? Well, you might see Tom playing during Jazz Fest. He's also directs some musicals. Yes? I haven't been to Jazz Fest, but I do play the piano. Collins also plays the piano. Well, maybe we'll get you up here someday, Collins. Well, today, Tom is actually going to teach us a song. He's going to teach the whole congregation a song. But if any of you want to get a little closer that way so that you can see and hear him better while he's teaching us that song, you can feel free to fill up that aisle or move in a little closer. And I'm going to turn this off and pass it over to Tom now.
So I'm just going to introduce you to the refrain of this song. Everyone's welcome to join us. It is in your hymnal on the Teal hymnal, number 1059, and we're going to do a somewhat different rhythm on this. But I was just thinking, for people who haven't sung this song before, it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. I think it's from Schubert, who says, "Life without music would be a mistake," which I definitely think that. And so the first line of the refrain kind of says the same thing. It says, "And may your life be as a song." It sort of turns that into a blessing. So it sounds like this. And may your life be as a song. Everybody try that. And may your life be as a song. The next line says, it's kind of like maybe you can make the day begin by singing. So it says, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light. And it goes, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light. Everybody try that. Resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light. And then you can also, the next line is about how you could sing to the stars at night. Then softly serenade the stars. Try that. Then softly serenade the stars. And the next line is about something that often goes with music, dancing. Ever dancing circles in the night. Everybody try that. Ever dancing circles in the night. You all sound fantastic. Let's try the whole thing, just the refrain, so it goes. And may your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light, then softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. The words are up there too. Fantastic. Okay, so my friends Tom Hyde and Karen Schickering are going to join me here, and they'll sing along with you when it comes to the chorus. And At the end, they're going to break off into a round, and if anybody's into rounds, you could join them for the round part. But just know that when we get to dancing circles at the very end, we're going to sing that a bunch of times, so just keep going with us. So there's some verses I'm going to add. My wish for you as now we part is for greater peace to fill your heart with dreams as vast as starry space, so hurt and anger know no place. May truth be shared and wounds be healed, and joy for living be revealed. Through every fate and circumstance, may hope lead weary steps to dance. And may your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the night, then softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. May fears be turned with keen insight to wisdom for what's just and right. Where sorrow grows, compassion strong, and pains will pass before too long. May the bounds of our diversity serve a richer harmony. May courage hold your heart so true to smile on love when it smiles on you. And may your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light, and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night, ever dancing circles in the night. Two more times because you sound so good. Ever dancing circles in the night, ever dancing circles in the night. Thank you. Beautiful singing.
As we let this music settle into us, let us deepen together into a time of meditation. Breathing in the breath of peace, breathing out the breath of love, and come into a place of holy listening. First, I will read the joys and sorrows of our community, and then we will hold a moment of silence together. During the music that follows, you are welcome to come up and choose a stone and place it on the table for any specific joy or sorrow that you hold within you. Joys and Sorrows for Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. Joy for the continuation of our Sunday morning breakfasts outside in the front, which continues to reach more and more people. And even people not belonging to our congregation are joining in with the effort. Sorrow for the death of our beloved stepfather, Michael Malbouf of Fairfield, from a fast-moving cancer. wishing strength to his wonderful family and many, many friends at this hardest of times, from Lori and Jess. And this one from Sue Scott. My brother Les died, and I'm really missing him. As long as I'm alive, I will always miss him. I will always remember him. I will always love him. Thank you for caring. And this just in from Sarah Rosendahl, who sends her sorrow for the death of a 5-week-old baby, Mariah, daughter of her nephew and nephew's spouse, Corey and Kaylee. Please hold them in your heart. May the joys and sorrows of each of us be the joys and sorrows of all of us, reminding us of our deep shared humanity.
With hands of love and courage, we have placed these stones into the care of this community. May your hearts feel solace in times of grief. May your hearts feel gratitude in times of joy. May your hearts know love. in the all of life. Blessed be.
Now is the time of our offering, and the words of our treasurer, Zoe Hart, resound in my mind that there are many gifts that we have beyond the financial, which people offer to our community, including standing out there at 8 in the morning, delivering food and to those people who need it. Financial offerings today will be shared with the Housing Retention Service, which is a statewide program addressing housing instability, providing support, interpretation, translation, and workshops. And this is out of the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, with the acronym, which is quite a mouthful to say, CVOEO. Committed to expanding access to critical housing resources, fighting discrimination, making communities inclusive. So please recite with me our offering dedication. With gratitude, we dedicate these gifts in the service of our mission to inspire spiritual growth, care for each other and our community, seek truth, and act for justice. The reading this morning is a meditation entitled Marginal Wisdom by Leslie Takahashi. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest is false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. For the day is coming when all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center.
the convention room was packed with people. This was well before the distancing days of COVID that has trained us to keep a healthy 6 feet apart. Instead, in this room, we were shoulder to shoulder in a very full and lively space in the Phoenix, Arizona Convention Center. It was 2012, and Unitarian Universalists from all over the country were gathered there for what was deemed Justice GA. Maybe some of you were present back in 2012. It was a general assembly where we set aside the normal business of our denominational body to put our faith into action and show up with the people right there in Phoenix who were suffering at the hands of callous public officials and unjust and oppressive policies. We were gathered in preparation for an action of public witness to take place outside of what had been deemed Tent City, an overflow outdoor prison known for its harsh conditions, operated under then Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Hundreds of Unitarian Universalists in yellow, then called Standing on the Side of Love, t-shirts, filed onto buses and demonstrated outside of the prison calling for its closure. Justice GA felt to me like it brought together the best of our faith as an expression of love and of hope. And truth be told, this had not always been apparent to me over the course of my, by then, several years in our Unitarian Universalist faith. I was raised Catholic. I found Unitarian Universalism as a young adult living in Washington, D.C. Having read about a conference for the network of spiritual progressives that had been held at the UU church nearby, I thought that I'd go and I'd check out a Sunday service. And I sat in the way back of the sanctuary. Maybe that's a familiar feeling. But as I joined my voice in chorus, as I sat in shared silence, as I listened to the powerful words being preached, as I saw myself as one among a group of people of diverse ages and ethnicities and genders, my heart opened and I wept through the entire service. But let me back up a moment, because what I said earlier about finding Unitarian Universalism as a young adult living in Washington, D.C. isn't the whole story. The truth is that I had made my way to a UU congregation a few years prior to that. I was a recent college graduate living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, working for a nonprofit social change organization, building out a nonpartisan campaign to mobilize young voters ahead of a historic presidential election. I'll let you guess which one it was. But as is true for many young adults, I was in a place of spiritual searching. I hadn't practiced the religious tradition of my childhood and youth for some time, but I felt a longing to be in religious community. And I knew I needed more freedom and a religious home that felt more relevant to my life at the time. So my roommate suggested I check out the UU congregation, which she was familiar with. I hadn't ever heard of Unitarian Universalism, but I thought, sure, why not? I'll go check it out. And so I found my way to this congregation. I sat in the way back. I noticed the unfamiliar hymnals in the pews and the lack of religious adornment in the sanctuary. I followed along as best I could, and then we reached a part of the service when several youth were introduced. One by one, each of them spoke for a few minutes. They talked about being part of a faith that is free and inclusive. They talked about being part of a faith in which one can believe in God or not, and that's just fine. One youth shared how they aren't yet sure what they believe, and that's okay. I stayed very briefly for the social time afterwards and then went home. And not being that far away yet from my Catholic upbringing, the service and the youth's statements blew my mind. Later, I would piece together that this had been the coming of age service, and the youth were sharing their credo statements with the congregation. I have come to see these two very different experiences in our UU congregation in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Washington, D.C., to exemplify the wideness of the circle our faith holds. Ours is a faith that holds a commitment to reason and intellectual rigor, alongside the presence of the Spirit and a fervor of religious feeling. It is a faith that holds doubt and questioning alongside moral certainty and conviction. It is a faith that holds atheists and theists, mystics and scientists, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Jews, and pagans. With a circle this wide, however, we might ask, how is this circle, how are we held together? Over the course of our short history as a consolidated denomination, and prior to that, within each branch of our Unitarian and Universalist beginnings, this question has been probed and tested. From our beginnings, Unitarians and Universalists have rejected religious dogma. However, there have been attempts to articulate some semblance of shared beliefs. This is especially evident in our Universalist branch. In 1803, the New England Convention of Universalists adopted the Winchester Profession, which stated a belief in the Holy Scriptures of the Bible, in one God whose nature is love, and that holiness and true happiness are inseparably connected. In 1935, the Universalist Bond of Fellowship asserted the Universalist faith in God as eternal and all-conquering love, in the spiritual leadership in Jesus, in the supreme worth of every human personality, in the authority of truth known or to be known, and in the power of men of goodwill and sacrificial spirit to overcome evil and progressively establish the kingdom of God. Within Unitarianism, we can also find that search for theological common ground. In 1885, William Channing Gannett wrote a statement of faith called "Things Commonly Believed Among Us," which was adopted by vote at the meeting of the Western Unitarian Conference, and it included such statements as, "We hold reason and conscience to be final authorities in matters of religious belief. We honor the Bible and all inspiring scripture, old and new. We revere Jesus and all holy souls that have taught men truth and righteousness and love as prophets of religion." And I have to say, I'm particularly fond of this final statement, despite the androcentric language. Remember, 1885. It said, "We worship one in all, that life, whence suns and stars derive their orbits, and the soul of man its ought. That light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world, giving us power to become the sons of God, that love with which our souls commune." Later on, in 1936, the Unitarian Commission on Appraisal conducted a study of values which culminated a list of items on which Unitarians agree and disagree. Which do you think was a longer list? I didn't actually count, but it is quite telling, this list, and an attempt to articulate them. Even humanists came up with a manifesto in 1933, which was intended to be a new statement of the means and purposes of religion. The manifesto has undergone 2 major revisions, the most recent in 2003. The original version of 1933, though, included 15 statements of affirmation. Among them, religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. We are convinced that the time has passed for theism, deism, modernism, and the several varieties of New Thought. And we assert that humanism will affirm life rather than deny it, seek to elicit the possibilities of life, not flee from them, and endeavor to establish the conditions of a satisfactory life for all, not merely for the few. None of these universalist, Unitarian, or humanist statements of shared belief were adopted without controversy and disagreement. Independence of thought is part and parcel of our religious DNA, after all. And the tug between a shared religious purpose and language and non-creedal individual freedom has pulled our religious ancestors back and forth, both in word and in practice. This propensity for continued evolution in our living tradition is well summarized by the Universalist Louis Fisher, who once served as dean of the Universalist Seminary, Rider Divinity School. He said, "Universalists are often asked to tell where they stand. The only true answer to give to this question is that we do not stand at all, we move." And we, Unitarian Universalists, have continued to move. When the 2 religious bodies of the Unitarians and Universalists began to come together in 1960, leaders of those bodies did their best to consolidate not only the different structures of these 2 denominations, but also our statements of belief. These statements of purpose were added to our denominational bylaws, written into Article 2, and have continued to this day to be where we turn for an articulation of our shared commitments, our shared covenant across congregations. Our views of pluralism and gender equity have evolved such that today, much of that original language, with its references to man and brotherhood, is noticeably out of touch. In the 1970s, calls to review and revise this statement of purposes and objectives became louder, led in large part by women in the denomination. And I won't recall all of this history, though it is quite fascinating and telling of how a democratically run religious body operates. The calls for reform led to a substantial version and revision of Article 2, which was fully adopted in 1985 as the Principles and Purposes. It is the version that can be found at the front of that gray hymnal, sitting beside those of you here in the pews. 7 principles were added to the original 1960 version of Article 2, along with 5 sources, and later on a 6th source of earth-centered traditions was added, and the sources were later updated to include gender-inclusive language. Given that our UUA bylaws call for a review of Article 2 every 15 years, such a review was overdue by the time one was again conducted in 2006. The UUA's Commission on Appraisal conducted this review. It culminated in a proposed revision, but the 2009 General Assembly narrowly voted not to proceed with moving this proposal forward. And so to this day, we still have Article 2 as it was written and adopted in 1985, found there in the front of your hymnal. But today, we as a denomination, some of you may be aware, are engaged once again in re-examining this statement of our principles and purposes. The Article 2 Study Commission, found in 2020, has just shared their report to the UUA board, which includes a proposed revision to Article 2 to be called Purposes and Covenant, which will be voted on preliminarily at this June's General Assembly in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Commission has been careful to say we are writing this in pencil, not etching it in stone. Article 2 is a living document which will surely further evolve and change in the decades to come. And now, bylaws, organizational bylaws, are not usually the place where shared theological claims are found. But for Unitarian Universalism, our current Article 2 statement is where we come the closest to making any kinds of shared theological claims. Given the weight that we place on this statement, these principles and purposes, the work of the Article 2 Study Commission has been significant. They were charged with conducting a thorough review of this article and to propose revisions that would guide us in the transformation of ourselves, our communities, and our faith into active networks of collective care, restoration, and justice. They were charged to place the liberation of all at the center of our lives and to propose revisions that center our commitment to anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism, which is love in action. As you can see, this was a big charge, especially in a faith tradition which has so grappled with any firm articulation of shared beliefs and commitments. In their 2005 report, Engaging Our Theological Diversity, the UUA Commission on Appraisal wrote of the lack of clarity regarding our theological vision and concluded such ambiguity and concomitant tentativeness in articulating what UUs are about religiously may be our greatest liability and the greatest obstacle to achieving our potential as an empowering and liberating faith for the 21st century. Over the last 15 years or so, many people within our religious movement have added to the call for a clearer vision of the way that our theologies, our beliefs about matters of ultimate concern, shape us as Unitarian Universalists. And this has been one of the approaches of the current Article 2 Study Commission. Indeed, the current proposed revision of Article 2 dares to name a theological center: love. With love as the center, the proposal includes a set of 6 shared values that inspire and inform the actions that we take in our lives. The shared values named are interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. With each value is a statement of what we, as member congregations of the UUA, covenant to do together. We covenant to cherish earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. This proposed revision makes a bold attempt to give more definition and substance to what holds us together, to articulating a center that can powerfully inspire and embolden our action in the world. The revision also makes room for the work of examining who has been centered in our religious movement, whose voices and whose stories, and bringing the margins into the center in transforming ways. A decade ago, as Unitarian Universalists gathered in prophetic witness outside Tent City, the feeling of shared purpose was palpable. The need for living our love out loud and for joining in solidarity for justice and liberation is as great today as it was then. And the stakes have also changed. In this time of threatened democracy, climate disruption and economic stability, how do we move forward with a shared vision and commitment to survive and thrive together? The question is not only what holds us Unitarian Universalists together, but what of our faith tradition enables us to be held to all of life, to the people and all living beings with whom we share this planet? What holds the greater us together? In the words of Rebecca Parker, what name do we give this depth that flows and emerges through us, manifesting in ever-widening circles of compassion, connection, justice, wholeness, care, and hope? Perhaps it doesn't matter what we name it, she says. Some would call it God, some would call it soul, some would call it spirit of life, some would call it Tao or the Buddha nature, some would call it love. Indeed, what holds us together can have many names and can stir within us the same feeling and spirit of collective commitment and action. Our current engagement with our statement of principles, purposes, and covenant is an opportunity for us to reimagine and to re-articulate this depth, this theological center, as well as the difference that our religious movement can make for one another and for the broader world. Ours is an evolving, living, transforming faith. At our best, we meet the times we are in with a faithful commitment to live and lead with a love that seeks justice, a love that seeks to widen the circle of care and concern, a love that seeks the flourishing of all life. May we seek that center, which reminds us of our common bond and that moves us into action that heals, that liberates, and that transforms. So may it be. I'll invite you to join in our closing hymn, number 1028, I think, in the Teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment. Please rise in body or spirit.
Hearts of
me the chalice kindling, chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again.
May you go from here held in the circle of life and love. May you seek the center which binds each to all, animating a liberating love for the thriving of all life. May you go in peace and return again in love. And we conclude this service with the postlude.